charging to the iPhone. I thought they would do that.
Yeah.
I thought they would have a wireless charging capability for the iPhone and for the watch too, because they've been starting to like put stations in Starbucks. And
Yeah.
stuff, so maybe doing that in your home, like plugging into the wall and having it send.
Well, I was most excited about my invention from this morning about replacing your eyeballs with. I mean, yeah, the eye. Oh, it looks like they're going down the Apple path, the Apple eye.
Well, because
Or is the Apple eyes?
the
They come in
eye-
2-packs?
you don't want to name something after the eye.
Replacement eye.
Thing's scary. Thing's demonic.
With
No.
black.
The Apple eye with retina display.
But it's only
The
720
animal.
HD
No,
camera.
animal, the
Oh,
eye.
yeah.
That thing was-
What are you talking about?
The actual animal, the eye.
But does it have?
There's an animal called the eye.
Yeah, AYE-AYE. It's
owned by Apple.
Is it just like terrifying?
it's like a little gremlin.
That's huge out
Yeah.
there. Is that the whole?
You know the most terrifying sight you will ever see based on an animal is if you come into your kitchen and you open up a cabinet and you see a really ticked off possum.
Yeah.
It's
You
like
should look up this animal.
yeah. You should look up the eye because it might give the possum a run for its money.
Okay, how do you,
Just like
how do you
normal-
spell it?
Yeah.
It's really freaky.
Yeah.
AIE.
Dude, I get that all the time.
That is like a demonic possum.
Look at this guy.
It may or may not give the possum a run for its money. Just normally.
It's like humanoid. That's the scary part.
Where does this live? Madagascar?
I hope I look that good.
Yeah, the best place to run into one of these would be like, you know, if you have a house like it has cats in it, you just put one of these like in one of your bathrooms, and you just think it's a cat. You turn the lights and just see this.
You put the collar of one of your cats on. This is like one of the
Cats don't wear collars.
Some do.
It's really hard to get a collar on a cat.
Because you put
Then they
bells,
drip it off.
when you put bells on a cat, then you know where it's at when it's like biting it.
Yeah, you got to start that when they're basically born.
Yeah.
You take a cat that's even like 6 weeks old, you start putting stuff on its neck. They are not going to like that. Not going to like that. No, I think a possum is.
Well, I mean, the staring back at you part, that would.
But the possum's got the teeth.
Yeah. True.
All right. So, any case, last time we were talking about comparing some cloud mining. So let's try to understand. Excuse me. Let's try to understand KNC's cloud mining technology compared to their actual hardware. I did get my golf in today, by the way.
Yeah, I got you.
It was supposed to be drizzling, and it was not just drizzling. It was,
It was raining.
it was raining. All right. So if we were to go out and we were to go to KNC and say, I want 3 terahashes of mining power for 6 months. This is their 6-month contract. It would cost us $5,500. That's the flat fee. We would get all Bitcoins produced by that 3 terahashes. All right, so let's look at that. Wow!
Have it as your
So monthly, we would get about 1.65 Bitcoins per month. So let's just keep the math easy. So that's 9.9 Bitcoins. Okay, now today's rate, again, keeping the math easy. $49.50. So at $500 per Bitcoin, we can give KNC $5,500 today, and they will give us the power to generate, we'll call this a maximum of 9.9 Bitcoins in 6 months. which has a US dollar value today of $49.50. How many of you would take this deal? Because if you took $5,500 today, you can get 11 Bitcoins today. Not have to wait 6 months. Or you can wait 6 months for your piece of equipment to hopefully generate you 9.9 Bitcoins. Why would anybody do this deal? Go ahead.
They're hoping for Bitcoins to go up in that 3-month period that they're waiting to actually become a profitable investment.
But you can still buy them right now and have them go up.
Yeah, you can still buy them right now and have 11 Bitcoins. But I mean, this is convenient. You don't have to deal with the power cost. It's all packaged in there. $5,500 gets you everything. They house it, they run it, they maintain it, they pay the power bills. All you get is the Bitcoins that come out of it.
It's even more convenient. Just buy the Bitcoins with the money.
Yeah.
Because then you don't even need to worry about how many it's actually going to produce. Then you just have
You know exactly how many it'll produce. The amount you bought it for, right? Why would anybody do this? What's KNC trying to do?
Make money.
Well, everybody's trying to make money. At what point does this make sense?
When Bitcoins are worth more.
When the cost of one Bitcoin is worth more. So if we crank this up, and instead of saying this is $5,500, if this was priced in terms of Bitcoin, now things could be a little different. So what if this contract was 8 Bitcoins? And you could potentially grow to 9.9 Bitcoins max in 6 months. As long as you believed that Bitcoin was going to go up, would that be a good deal? Potentially, yeah. It would be certainly better than it is now, right? In this case, it's, hey, here's a US dollar amount. This place is based in China, by the way. Here's a US dollar amount. Give us your cash today. We'll give you a piece of equipment that will generate you less Bitcoins that you can just buy today. Why would anybody do it? And the funny thing is, this is new. Their cloud mining is something they just came out with. Join their Arctic cloud. So they actually have it up there in the Arctic. It's like an old airplane hangars with the doors open, so it's all,
And it's always springtime around it.
That's right. Always. So 1 terahash for 2,000. 3 terahashes for 5,500. 5 terahashes. That's $1.79 per gigahash. But at the end of the 6 months, it's gone. Now, what would make this a good deal? If at the end of that 6-month contract, you could do what? Get some or all of your money back? So you're kind of like you're putting a deposit on it. You're supporting the equipment for that period of time. And then you can continue to support it if you want, maybe at an additional discount, or you let your money ride. So it seems like nobody would actually do this, correct? The other model we looked at last time was CEX. CEX, we're going to take that same $5,500, and $5,500 gets us 11 Bitcoins, right? So 11 divided by 0.0038 gets us 2894. So it gets us just a little bit less gigahashes per second. 2894 gigahashes per second mining power. And in 6 months, that's going to generate us, well, here, we'll say 9.5 Bitcoins. A little bit less, right? Okay, 9.5 Bitcoins. That's after 6 months. But after 6 months, we can then take these 2894 gigahashes and we can sell them back for Bitcoin. And let's say the price of them is cut in half. Point zero. Like that. That'll get us an extra 5.5 for a total of 15 Bitcoins. Is that worth it?
Yeah.
Possibly. Yeah, that's seemingly more worth it, right? Now this is a situation where it's better than if we just took $5,500 today and bought Bitcoin. We can now buy the Bitcoins. Now this has been a change in the way cloud hashing historically has worked, which is kind of interesting. I like using KNC as the example here. KNC is a pretty well-respected cloud mining equipment company. Not cloud mining, a Bitcoin mining equipment company. And their cloud mining is something very new. And it seems to be priced, I don't know if they just sent like a chimpanzee into a locker room with like some dice and then just came out with a pricing based on, I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know how they're going to possibly sell this at all. It doesn't make any sense. But historically, cloud mining was based on contracts like this. You give us an amount of money, usually that money was in Bitcoins, but whatever, some kind of payment. You give us an amount of money and we'll turn that money into a mining contract for you where you'll get so many gigahashes for a period of time. At the end of that period of time, our arrangement is disconnected and you get the fruits of that mining, however many Bitcoins it generated. Okay? And we see that this model doesn't really make a lot of financial sense, even with the power bill. So let's go back here and throw the power bill into this. If we were to do this ourselves, instead of doing the cloud mining, we can get 3 terahashes of mining power for $6,000. We can actually buy the machine. We can keep this for longer than 6 months if we want. So we're going to purchase the machine for $6,000. For that 6 months, that machine is going to cost us $163.80 per month. So $163.80 times 6. So there's our $982.80 in power. Okay? So $982 in power is what we're going to spend. And we know we're going to generate that same 9.9 Bitcoins. Correct? All right, so a $6,000 investment was actually a $69.82 investment, and we have $5,000 worth of coins left over afterwards. But we also have a piece of equipment. So at the end of 6 months, how much can we sell that equipment for? $3,000? $2,000? Somewhere in there. So this becomes wash-ish, possibly. You know, because the amount of money we're going to spend an extra $1,000. So this is $7,000 in purchase with $5,000 left over. So that's $2,000 in the middle. We can maybe flip the equipment for that and make it back so we get back to nothing. In this case, we lost $500. So these two models aren't that different in terms of financial return. The only way cloud mining makes sense here is from a convenience perspective. You don't have to wait for the equipment to arrive. It'll start working for you immediately. You don't have to worry about selling it when it becomes antiquated. You don't have to worry about power bills. You don't have to worry about the heat it gives off, heating up your house, causing more of your power bills to go up. You know, because now you have the electricity to run the equipment, but now you also have the electricity to cool your house back down from the heat it's giving off, unless you're doing this in the winter. You only do winter mining and just use your mining equipment as your heating source, which people do.
What about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a legitimate thing people do. But these are things you have to take into consideration because there's some additional hidden costs. You know, if you are in the middle of the summer and you already have your air conditioning cranked in your house to try to keep your house somewhat cool, and now you put this piece of equipment in there that's just giving off heat. Now your air conditioner is going to have to work that much harder to keep the house cool. So you're actually spending more than $163 per month extra because you're also having to pay the additional electricity to cool the house off even more. Okay, so that continues to play in. Where the CEX model is flexible. What's wrong with this model? There's two different levels of economy here. One level is what they call GHS, gigahash per second, to Bitcoin. That's a real-time price increase or decrease. So at any point in time, 1 gigahash per second is worth some number of Bitcoins. Right now, it's 0.0038. 2 months ago, it was 0.007. 1 month ago, it was about 0.006. 4 months ago, it was about 0.006. So it's actually at a really low point right now. But that is one issue you have in there, is that price per gigahash is measured in Bitcoins. Then you have a secondary metric that is US dollar to Bitcoin. So at any point in time, I can sell gigahashes. We can take this 2,894 gigahashes and we can turn it back into Bitcoin. It will stop mining for us and we will get however many Bitcoins those gigahashes are worth at the current fair market value on their exchange. So if we go to CEX here. Let's see what we're sitting at today. Ooh, Bitcoin's down to 470 today. Yeah, 0.003816. So see how many decimal places it goes out to, quite a few. So it's sitting around the same it's been sitting at. We go to the month, we can see kind of where it's been. This was our high. Oh, that was for Bitcoin. I want that chart for the month. Okay, so this was 0.0039 something, between 0.0039 and 0.004. But most of the month, it has sat certainly between 0.037 and 0.039. These two numbers. And that's a measurement in Bitcoin. And that is completely disconnected from what Bitcoin has done at that same period of time. So the range here has been what range? Let's look at this as a percentage. Not as a percentage, as a dollar amount. Times, let's just do 500. So is that?
Your parentheses?
Yeah, but yeah.
Okay, so at a fixed price of $500 per Bitcoin, the swing has been about 5 cents. Make sense? Pun intended. Okay, the swing has been 5 cents for the last month. That means at any point in time, if the price of Bitcoin remained the same, the difference between gigahashes has been about a nickel at any point in time. Now, if we look at this chart, which shows Bitcoin during that same period of time, Bitcoins have been valued between, is it about 540?
Are you looking at the month?
This is for month. I think it's the same chart, just highlighted funny. So 540 down to 470, somewhere in that ballpark. So we had a high of 540, we had a low of 470. So that's $70 range in terms of price of Bitcoin. Well, that's a pretty substantial swing in Bitcoin. Bigger shift in Bitcoin volatility. So if we look at that over here, so gigahash to Bitcoin had a range of 0.0037 to 0.0039. And US dollar to Bitcoin had a range of, on the low, 470, which is today, and a high of 540. Close enough? Okay. So the price per gigahash in terms of Bitcoin fluctuates in a smaller band than the price of Bitcoin does to US dollars. But there's two separate economies going on here. So at first glance, this thing might seem like, oh, well, this is a much better deal than KNC's cloud mining. And in fact, it is. This is a better deal than KNC's cloud mining. But this is a more complex problem you're having to solve. Because now you have to decide three different variables. Do I keep gigahashes? Do I keep Bitcoins? Or do I turn things back to US dollars? What is the right thing to do with my stuff now? Does that make sense? Is it most profitable to have it mining for me? Is it most profitable just have it sitting there as Bitcoin? Or do I bail now because Bitcoin's out of some sort of temporary high? Kind of make sense? So at the end of this 6-month period that we're showing up here, when we go to sell off our gigahashes, we're at the mercy of whatever this rate is compared to whatever that rate was when we got in. Okay? So then we have to decide, is it profitable for us to stay in, to get out? Do we get all the way out? Do we keep half of our gigahashes in? What's in the middle? And then after we move it to Bitcoin, then we can decide, do we want to keep it in Bitcoin, just sit on it and wait for Bitcoin to go up or something? Or do we bail now? So there's all sorts of risk levels in here, all sorts of variables. The more variables associated with something, typically the higher the risk. Or at least the more volatile the risk. That's probably the more accurate way of putting it. All right, so very interesting problem. Now, the hodgepodge of these two things together would be this chart, the gigahash to US dollar. So on this 1-month basis, we've seen that gigahashes, I'm sure this was some sort of crazy anomaly. When was that?
I bet you when somebody sold something, they sold it on accident, very low on accident, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one day. Somebody sold off 3,000 gigahashes for 0.65 or for 65 cents per gigahash. Just a fire sale. That had to be probably somebody doing a instant sell.
I want out now.
Somebody said I want out now, and it just happened to be their timing was bad. That somebody had, like for instance, I have set up on mine a constant order to sell my gigahashes at some ridiculous price. So, like for instance, right now, somebody might buy my gigahashes at 0.0038. That would be a fair market value for my per gigahash. I think I have mine set up to sell at 0.007, which is the highest I've ever seen it. So if the volume is low enough and nobody else is selling gigahashes, and somebody gets in and wants to buy a bunch of gigahashes, and they can hit the button. Well, they might not know. This would probably just be a mistake. And they go in, because one of the options when you buy gigahashes from here is you can just say instant buy, which just says, here's how much I have to spend, get me as many gigahashes as I can with this. With the expectation that there's enough volume of gigahashes being bought and sold to support the fair market value. But what if nobody else is selling gigahashes at that moment except me? Okay? Or let's say, you have two guys selling gigahashes, then I have this giant pool of gigahashes, just us three. So this guy says, I want to buy instantly this, some number of gigahashes. He's going to buy out those first two guys at the cheaper price. Then he's going to get to mine, and now the best price offered is 0.007 Bitcoin per gigahash. It's almost twice as much as fair market value right now. And they're going to buy me out. That seems like kind of the inverse of what happened here. Somebody sold off at just some ridiculous number because somebody else was offering a really low price to buy Bitcoins. So the part of the problem with that was a supply and demand issue. If I'm the only one selling and I'm not willing to sell for a cheap price and you want to buy, you got to pay my price. So I'm thinking that is an anomaly there. Somebody was probably pretty ticked off. But generally, as we look at this, we see the price per gigahash was very much within the range of certainly between 1.7 and $2 per gigahash, right? Really about $1.80 and $2 per gigahash. More recently, it's been down some. So if we look at the last month as a pattern, we might say that our price per gigahashes are a little bit cheap right now. There may be 19 cents off what might be considered average or reasonable. So one could look at this and speculate that, the cost per gigahash right now is actually inexpensive. So maybe you buy more gigahashes. If the price goes above $2, you might say, now it's kind of expensive. Don't buy any more. Maybe sell off some. Wherever that, wherever the smart step in the middle is. So what's better? Do I sell off for a little profit or do I have it keep mining for me in the meantime? But every single day, two different numbers change. The cost of Bitcoins to US dollars and the cost of gigahashes to Bitcoins. And this is the average in the middle. Okay, so there's a lot of dynamics at work here. So assuming at the end of your contract, or our fictitious contract we're saying here with CEX for the $6,000, or the 6 months rather, assuming at the end of that we can bail and at least get some back for our gigahashes. The hope would be that it has value, right? That the value of gigahashes is worth something, so our equipment isn't worthless. It's now worth something. Then now it became worth it at some level. Okay, so CEX is very cool, very flexible, but has a lot of moving parts to it that can cause, throw some, wrench into the fire, I guess. Wrench into the engine, maybe. Which do you like the best out of all these? If you were starting Bitcoin mining today, would you start off? We could probably throw KNC cloud mining out, right? So maybe our competition is between buying some mining equipment like the KNC Jupiter or Neptune, whatever it was, for $6,000 for 3 terahashes, or getting a cloud mining contract, which is better.
It just comes down to time that you're willing to spend on it.
What if, so we used the example last time about Concordia footing the power bill. So if we had this setup, where we're going to do the $6,000 piece of hardware, we're going to run it so we don't have to worry about the $163 a month. That's on Concordia's, that's on our tuition, right? So $6,000, and we're going to generate 9.9 Bitcoins in 6 months, assuming the internet plays ball. Which, by the way, here on campus it doesn't. Just FYI, some of you were thinking about purchasing some equipment, the internet on campus blocks most of the pools to go out and mine them. So I don't know that they're doing that purposely, but just FYI. So the one part you wouldn't think would be the problem. You're like, oh, cheap power bill. Yeah, well, it won't work anyways. But you can plug it in and really stick it to the man.
Plug it in and have it running anyway.
I'm just going to have it running anyways.
It's like I'm not going to turn it off until you let me.
That's right. So but let's just say that it worked. So we have our $6,000. We're going to generate our 9.9 Bitcoins, and then we're going to sell it for 2,000 at the end of the 6 months. So now we have, 5,000 in Bitcoins plus 2,000 in cash from the sale of it. So we have $7,000. We made $1,000 in 6 months. Not horrible, assuming we could sell it for 2,000. And my feeling is you probably would be able to. If you paid $6,000 for it and you can go on eBay and say, I have this piece of equipment, it works and it is in hand. You don't have to wait for third quarter of never for it to come out. So now it becomes a profitable endeavor. Even if you were paying the power bill, it could still be profitable, but the margins are tighter. And that's if Bitcoin stays where it's at now. If you think Bitcoin's going up, it could be very profitable. If you think Bitcoin's going down, it becomes less profitable. So given that type of thing, are we better off going with our own hardware, even if we don't have to pay the power bill, than cloud mining through a model like CEX? Or is the model like CEX still better? We have to think about this in extremes. Let's say that the price of Bitcoin goes way, 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 way up. Okay? So, using the CEX model, if the price of Bitcoin goes up to $1,500, which is the number it's been at that before. So it's going to triple from where it's at right now. Let's say between now and the end of the year, it gets up to $1,500. Okay? What would that do to the pricing on CEX? So I have my 3,000 gigahashes. It's going to earn me 9.5 Bitcoins over that 6 month period. That's a fixed number. Doesn't matter what the current US dollar value is for a Bitcoin. I'm going to have 9.5 of them. Now I'm ready to cash out. So I have 9.5 Bitcoin sitting there in my account. I have 2,894 gigahashes sitting in my account. If the price of Bitcoin goes way, 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 way up, what's likely going to happen to the price of gigahashes? Well, it's got to be one of those. Maybe it could be it doesn't move.
It's gonna go sideways.
Everyone starts to sell his gigahash. It's a problem. It's going down.
When we looked at the gigahash to US dollars, it stayed pretty steady, right? We can call this pretty flat. So basically a gigahash always costs around $2 US for 1 gigahash. Fair enough statement to say based on this chart? If we don't look at this. Yeah, I bet this guy was pissed. Okay. So, $2 today, or it's $1.81 today, whatever. That's at a Bitcoin value of $500 per Bitcoin, a little bit less than that. But if Bitcoins go up 3 times, what will that do to the cost in Bitcoins of a gigahash? It should roughly go down 3 times. Correct? To maintain the approximately $2 per gigahash. Because a Bitcoin's now worth more, 1 gigahash will likely not be 0.0038 Bitcoins. It'll be a third of that if Bitcoins are now worth triple. That makes sense? So it would be 0.001. 1, 2, 3 Bitcoins. All right? So you'll get less Bitcoins out of your gigahashes at the end. So even if it does that, so at the end here, I'm going to take my 2,894 and I'm going to sell it at 0.00123 I'm going to get 3.56 Bitcoins out of it. So that's 13.06 total Bitcoins based on my initial $5,500 purchase. So now I have 1,306 Bitcoins, and I can sell those 1,306 Bitcoins. And we said that they are worth currently $1,500. So $19,590. Pretty good investment with CEX. All right. Well, what if the same thing happens with my standalone hardware? I get my $6,000 piece of equipment. I run it for my 6 months, even without paying the power bill. So I have 9.9 Bitcoins from it. Now I'm going to go and sell that equipment. If the price of Bitcoins right now is $1,500, triple what they were when I bought the equipment to keep the model the same. Is the equipment going to be worth more or less? US dollars. Before we used the number like, oh, we could probably sell it for $2,000. We used the number that when we bought it at $6,000, we would probably be able to sell it for about a third of what we bought it for, right? Well, now it's been 6 months. Equipment's 6 months old. You know, it doesn't perform as well as it did 6 months ago, but it's still 3 terahashes. It's probably going to still be pretty competitive. What will I be able to sell it for? If the current current price per Bitcoin is $1,500, more or less than 2,000? Do you think?
More.
Probably more. The machine actually became more valuable. So you might not be able to get your full 6,000 out of it, but you might be able to. I mean, if we're just going to keep with our simple math, Bitcoin tripled in value. We thought that our equipment should basically drop in value by 2/3. But since the value of Bitcoin went up, now we basically just halved it. Maybe we could sell the equipment for what we paid for it, 6,000. So now we have 9.9 Bitcoins times 1,500. That's 14,850 plus 6,000. That's $20,850. Using, again, simple math, but with the exact same model. Which would you rather do? In this model, we got $19,590 back. So a profit of $14,000. In this model, we got a profit of basically the same thing, $14,000. 14-ish. So each of these models, using the same numbers on both sides, we had a profit of about $14,000 in 6 months, assuming Bitcoin tripled in value. So keep in mind, this is based on Bitcoin tripling in value. Could happen, has happened. In fact, happened this time last year. Between this point and the end of year last year, we weren't looking at very dissimilar numbers to what we're looking at right now. I bet you if you look at Bitcoin last September, I bet you the price was in the $400 some odd range. And by the end of December, it was just under $1,500. Then beginning of January, it was at 200 and some odd bucks. So, pretty volatile market. So which of these do you go with? Certainly we can see these two are competitive with each other, right? Which do you go with and why?
I would go with cloud mining because I just think that there's too much risk with actually having that volatile hardware in your house.
Okay.
It gives off a lot of heat. It's prone to causing fires because of the heat. There's just a lot of risk in that.
Okay. So having the hardware, even if it can be slightly more profitable, you think has a headache associated with it.
Yeah.
That isn't worth it.
And then you have to factor in, like, if you want to buy ventilation for the equipment and all that good stuff, or if a piece of the equipment breaks, you gotta replace that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just more hassle with the hardware.
Okay.
With the cloud mining, you don't have the possibility of your hardware breaking.
Correct.
Because if the hardware breaks, then
That's on them.
Yeah, and if you had the hardware and it breaks, then you're not going to be able to sell it to get your money back for buying the hardware.
If it's under warranty, you can try to contact the company. You know, these places are a lot of time not real easy to contact, and their replacement program might be might be crappy or at the very least slow. So you might be out of commission for a period of time. So certainly, having your Bitcoin mining hardware go down is a much bigger hassle than having your car need to go to the shop, where you're without your car for a day. You'd probably be without your Bitcoin mining hardware for a month, something like that. So why would anybody own Bitcoin mining hardware as a personal person, as somebody who's just going to mine Bitcoin stuff themselves? This is kind of painting a picture of what's happening with the industry right now. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's more of a dirty thing. Like, oh look, I have this new Bitcoin mining equipment. It's more of like a pride type thing.
A hobbyist type thing, right?
Yeah.
It's so sometimes people do things that don't necessarily make the most financial sense, but it's, as an example, how many of you, and you're not allowed to lie. Everybody has to be 100% honest here. How many of you have ever built your own Halo armor?
Don't look at me. I've watched tutorials.
Okay, but we know of this. It's just something that popped in my head. There is not a financially good reason to build your own Halo armor, right? Because we're human beings and we don't need Halo armor. But some people really love Halo and like the whole idea of the armor, and they built it for the conventions and stuff like that. We had a student here last year, Mark Jamber. Funny, actually, he got a very, very, very good high-paying job right out of school. Probably, I think he was our highest paid graduating senior this last year. So see, building Halo hardware. Is there more to that story that I don't know?
I don't think so. I was just surprised that he's the highest paid.
Oh, I think by quite a bit. He got a very good job. Well, he's very bright.
But I know that.
Just he's a little bit off. He built his own Halo armor. So, but in any case, he built his own Halo armor because it was interesting to him. So you have that hobbyist nature. So some geeky people, same thing when in computer science, people who run Linux. Any of you in here run Linux today? I think I asked that question before. A couple of you? Is there a great reason in today's computing world to run Linux? Generally speaking, no. It's not in the top two, right? It's a very distant third. But becoming very proficient with Linux makes you very proficient with everything else. In fact, basically, the Mac OS is a Linux operating system. I spend a lot of time, you guys have seen me do it, out here at the terminal, which is basically Unix. We're sitting out here at Unix right here. So I do a lot of stuff out there. There isn't a good argument to use Linux, but from a hobbyist perspective, a lot of people do it. All right? So I think when people own their own personal Bitcoin mining equipment, I think anymore it's gotten to the point where it's very much a hobbyist type thing and an educational type thing, as opposed to it making the most financial sense. At the very least, we've shown that it doesn't make horrible financial sense. At the very least, it seems to be kind of a break even. But you're kind of taking on some hardware risk and stuff like that. That, okay, something goes wrong with this. I have to go talk to the dude in China to help fix this. Now you have language barrier problems. You have shipping costs. You have all sorts of other issues that come into that. So what has happened with the Bitcoin mining industry? What's happened is it's become commercialized. Places like KNC, like CEX, like a whole bunch of other places have created these gigantic, almost like military type compounds. Like KNC has this thing in the Arctic. They've built these compounds for hosting tons and tons of Bitcoin mining equipment, and now script mining equipment as well, which we'll talk about. You can't compete with that, because that exacerbates the problem of we buy a piece of equipment today and in 2 months it's antiquated, because the Bitcoin network keeps getting more and more difficult because the total mining power keeps going up, and up. So if you spend your $6,000 that you just saved up to buy this 3 terahash piece of equipment and it's sitting in your living room, and all of a sudden there's a new breakthrough in technology, your equipment might become half as effective overnight. It's very interesting. Very interesting kind of world we live in. Now let me jump forward. I know we're out of time, but let me just kind of show you where we're going. So I know I said this a couple classes ago, but we got off on a tangent. We're going to build a data structure around the block header, and we're going to start looking at the SHA-2 and the SHA-256 algorithm specifically, and how that algorithm is put together in terms of the actual algorithm of it. Okay, I'm glad I kind of stopped myself there. We will not have class on Monday. That's not a sickness thing. Well, I hope it's not a sickness thing. I have a President's Concordia thing. This is something I knew about. Wasn't planning on missing this past Monday, but I will see everybody on Wednesday. We have a couple assignments that are still out there that I will get graded. I have to catch up. I was sick, so. Anyways, I will see most of you on Wednesday. Some of you I'll see on Tuesday. So no class on Monday.
I gotta go.